From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
We are delighted to start this new series. We're starting a series called Poet to Poet, Poeta a Poeta. And our idea is to have a poet, a poet who's alive, to honor a great poet of the Hispanic language. We are starting this great series here today with Consuelo, who's going to be doing a homage to Cesar Vallejo. I want to take this opportunity to also tell you a little bit about the Hispanic Reading Room of the Library of Congress. The Hispanic Reading Room is the primary access point for research related to the Caribbean, Latin America, Spain, and Portugal. And it's open to everyone. Whoever has a reader's card can use our reading room, so everyone is welcome. If anyone wants to find out more about our programs, please visit our website, which is www.loc.gov/RR/Hispanic. And now to today's event. We're going to have Consuelo, who's going to do a homage to, as I said, Peruvian poet Cesar Vallejo, one of our most beloved poets of Latin America. And then Consuelo is going to read some poems from Vallejo together with Maureen Contreni, who is going to read the poems in English. And then Consuelo is going to move, she's going to then read some of her work. And Contreni is going to read the English translations. About our featured speakers, Consuelo Hernandez was born in Colombia and has lived in Venezuela, Peru, Puerto Rico, and the United States. She has published 4 collections of poems, among them Voces de la Soledad, Solo de Violín, Poemario para Músicos y Pintores, Manual de Peregrín, and a bilingual collection, Poemas de Escombros y Ceniza, and in English that one is titled Poems of Debris and Ashes. And the book that we're here to celebrate, and the one that she'll be reading from today, Mi Reino Sin Orillas. Consuelo's poetry has been included in numerous anthologies. She has received many honors, including distinctions from the International Poetry Contest of Ciudad Melilla in Spain, and at the Letras de Oro contest at the University of Miami. She is also, in 2011, she received the Antonio Machado Poetry Award in Madrid, Spain, and the Mid-Atlantic Council of Latin American Studies, among many other honors. And Consuelo is also an associate professor at the World Languages and Cultures Department at American University here in Washington. As I said, she will be accompanied by Maureen Contreni, who has translated some of Consuelo's poetry, and Maureen graduated also from American University, and that's where she met Consuelo. And she's an attorney, and she has traveled extensively throughout Latin America, so I'm assuming that's why you love translating Latin American poetry. One last announcement, we will be selling, Consuelo is selling her book at the back, and maybe she'll be glad to sign some copies at the end. So the books are located here in the back. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Consuelo Hernandez. Thank you.
Thank you, Catalina, for that presentation. Good afternoon, and thank you for making the trip up here today in this beautiful raining day. It feels so good to see many familiar faces of friends and colleagues. Thank you. I want to give my special thanks to Catalina Gomez and Dr. Georgette Dorn, who from the Hispanic Division of the Library of Congress invited me for this special event. I am also very grateful with Maureen Contreni, my dear translator. Though she has translated 4 of my books, this is the first time we are sharing one reading. She's a busy attorney, a wonderful mother of two, and a very exceptional friend. I met Maureen at American University, I think that around 20 years ago. And when she was in my freshman class, it was 1 star, already completely trilingual in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And I don't know if she has learned another language, but I was astonished by her translation. So until now, though she doesn't dedicate only to translate, she translated my book. And thank you for that and for being here. I also would like to dedicate this poetry reading to my Peruvian and Colombian brothers and sisters that are facing the worst catastrophe, natural catastrophe that they have suffered in the last decades. And Trujillo, the city where Vallejo spent most of his more important intellectual formation years, is one of the cities more affected. So we have that day in mind today. It is a great pleasure for me and a big honor to be in this series celebrating the greatest, the most wonderful, and the most beloved poet of Latin American during the 20th century. Cesar Vallejo is the poet really from the avant-garde times. He was a poet that before Breton published the Surrealist Manifesto, he was already surrealist, avant la lettre. And his books, he lives only 46 years, from 1892 to 1918. But those years were enough to write an immortal work of poetry. At the beginning of the year, I was contacted by Catalina and asked me to give the name of one poet that has been influential in my work, or somebody that I really like it. And honestly, I couldn't give her only one name. There are many poets that I have read and many that I enjoy, so I sent a list of 6 names and left her to choose whoever she considered more appropriate to start the series. And some days later, I received a letter, an email, telling me that the select poem was Cesar Vallejo. And I was just thrilled. And in some way, I thought, what a coincidence, because Vallejo is one of those very few poets that when I read for the first time, he moved me to tears. And I think that everybody who reads Vallejo can cry when you read those poems. So I start to think, what do I have in common with Vallejo? And I really don't know how much of Vallejo is in my poetry. I'm going to leave this work for the critics, but I try to find some parallelisms between his life and my life, and the motivation he has to write poetry, and my own motivations. And I'm going just to mention some because I think it's useful to illustrate a little who was Cesar Vallejo. One thing in common is that we born in March 16. March 16 is his date when he born, and March 16 is my official birthday. Another thing is our provincial origins. He was born in Santiago de Chuco, in Peruvian highlands, in a provincial town, in an environment very religious. His parents were both mestizo, and they were the son and daughter from priests. in Peru. So they have that religious formation since the very beginning. So I thought that was interesting because I also from a little town in Colombia, from the Andean Mountains, 1 hour from Medellin, El Peñol, and I lived there for 10 years. Vallejo moves from Santiago de Chuco to Trujillo and to Lima in order to study, and I moved when I was 10 with my family to Medellin also to get education and go to the university. And by the way, here is one of my professors from the University of Antioquia that was really a surprise because she was my professor, I think 50 years ago, around that. And she's also a translator, Patricia Bejarano. And then Vallejo, after those years in Trujillo and in Lima, studying and getting his intellectual development, he decided to go to France. And from France, he traveled to the Eastern European countries, especially to Russia. He went 4 times because of his political convictions. And then he went also to Spain to collaborate with the Republican cause. In my case, I moved to Venezuela, moved by spiritual and idealistic convictions too, and though not political. And then I went to Peru, to Puerto Rico, and finally I came to United States where I did my PhD, and I definitely stay here already 30 years. But our similarities in our lives doesn't end here. I think what Derones, his poetry, is also common to my poetry. He has, he shows in his poetry a profound necessity on absolutely freedom and at the same time the impossibility to find it. His nostalgia also for his lost paradise of the childhood, the memories of his family, especially his mother and his brother, his suffering for the losses that he had during his life. He lost his brother in 1915, his mother in 1918, then his father. He was also in jail for 112 days. So he has a very difficult life, and that's showing his poetry too. And he has an existential anguish and a kind of sense of feeling an orphan in this world, lonely, in solitude, and besides that, he had the concerns for political and social justice, and that puts him into trouble because of his political convictions. He was expelled from France and he had to live in Spain for certain times, and he went back to Spain. But anyway, in his poetry, there are also the eternal themes of poetry: death, love, life, and in a way, this is also present in my poetry. So I think that the selection of Cesar Vallejo was very just for our reading today. But we are not here to hear another scholarly presentation. This is something that you can read in many critic studies about his poetry. There are also many biographies, and some of them exceptional, like the one written by Juan Espejo, Turizaga. So we are going to go into his poetry, And I'm going to try to put into contest. Anytime I read a poem, I'm going to put it into contest, and Maureen is going to read the translation. He wrote several books of poetry, but when he died, he only had published 2, and both self-published. I want to emphasize that they were self-published because many times we devaluate that self-publications. And one gigante like this published Los Heraldos Negros, the Black Heralds, and Trilce, that doesn't have any translation because it's a word, a neologism, it's a word invented by him, Trilce. He published by himself with his own money in Lima before going to France. And since he went to Europe, he didn't publish any other poetic book, and all the rest of his work was unpublished until he died. His widow was the one that published the other books. So this is his complete work on poetry, and half of this was unpublished when he died. So we're going to start the reading with one poem entitled Los Heraldos Negros. Este poema de Los Heraldos Negros abre este libro y habla de el choque tremendo que tuvo César Vallejo cuando recibió un telegrama de su hermano que le decía sobre la muerte de su madre. Entonces, es un poema muy fuerte y muy bello. Los heraldos negros. Hay golpes en la vida tan fuertes, yo no sé. Golpes como si el odio de Dios, como si lo siento, necesito las gafas y más luz. Muy bien. No sé si podríamos mover el podio un poquito para que me diera directo la luz. ¿Muy oscuro? Sí, a ver si me puede dar directo este. No, no se puede. Ah, no se puede. No, está bien. Vamos a ver si. Ok. Volvamos a empezar. Los heraldos negros. Hay golpes en la vida tan fuertes, yo no sé. Golpes como del odio de Dios, como si ante ellos la resaca de todo lo sufrido se emposara en el alma, yo no sé. Son pocos, pero son. Abren zanjas oscuras en el rostro más fiero y en el lomo más fuerte. Serán tal vez los potros de bárbaros Atilas o los heraldos negros que nos manda la muerte. Son las caídas hondas de los Cristos del alma, de alguna fe adorable que el destino blasfema. Esos golpes sangrientos son las crepitaciones de algún pan que en la puerta del horno se nos quema. Y el hombre, pobre, pobre, vuelve los ojos locos, como cuando por sobre el hombro nos llama una palmada. Vuelve los ojos locos y todo lo vivido se emposa como un charco de culpa en la mirada. Hay golpes en la vida tan fuertes, yo no sé.
Thank you very much for having me here. The Black Heralds. There are blows in life so powerful, I don't know. Blows like God's hatred as if before them. The undertow of everything suffered were to well up in the soul, I don't know. They're few, but they exist. They open dark furrows in the most ferocious face and the most powerful loins. Perhaps they're wooden horses of barbaric Attilas or black messengers that death sends to us. They're profound lapses of the soul's Christs, of some adorable faith that destiny blasphemes. Those bloodthirsty blows are cracklings of some bread that in the oven's door burns up on us. And man, poor, poor man, he turns his eyes as when a slap on the shoulder calls us by name. He turns his crazed eyes, and everything he's lived wells up like a pool of guilt in his gaze. There are blows in life so powerful, I don't know.
Los pasos lejanos. In this poem, Vallejo is already far from Santiago de Chuco. And he's missing his family. So the central figures here are his father and his peaceful mother. Dice, mi padre duerme su semblante augusto, figura un apacible corazón. Esta hora tan dulce, si hay algo en él de amargo, seré yo. Hay soledad en el hogar, se reza y no hay noticias de los hijos hoy. Mi padre se despierta, ausculta la huida de Egipto, el restañante adiós. Esta hora tan cerca, si hay algo en él de lejos, seré yo. Y mi madre pasea allá en los huertos, saboreando un sabor ya sin sabor. Esta hora tan suave, tan ala, tan salida, tan amor. Hay soledad en el hogar sin bulla, sin noticias, sin verde, sin niñez. Si hay algo quebrado en esta tarde y que baja y que cruje, son dos viejos caminos blancos curvos. Por ellos va mi corazón a pie.
Distant footsteps. My father sleeps. His august expression suggests a tranquil heart. Now he's so sweet. If there's anything bitter in him, it must be me. There's loneliness at home. He prays, and there's no news of the children today. My father wakes up, listening inside himself for the flight into Egypt, the goodbye that stops the flow of blood. Now he's so close. If there's anything distant in him, it must be me. Out there, my mother passes through the orchards, already savoring the savor without savor. Now she's so soft, so much wing, so gone, so much love. There's loneliness at home with no noisy brood, no news, no green, no childhood. And this afternoon, if there's anything broken that stoops over and creaks, it's two old, white, curving roads. Down them, my heart travels on foot.
A mi hermano Miguel. Miguel was the closest brother to Cesar. Cesar is the 11th children of this big family. And Miguel was the one before the last one. So they were very close, and he died in 1915. So this poem is A mi hermano Miguel in memoria. Hermano, hoy estoy en el pollo de la casa, donde nos haces una falta sin fondo. Me acuerdo que jugábamos esta hora y que mamá nos acariciaba. Pero hijos, ahora yo me escondo, como antes, todas estas oraciones vespertinas, y espero que tú no des conmigo por la sala, el zaguán, los corredores. Después te ocultas tú y yo no doy contigo. Me acuerdo que nos hacíamos llorar, hermano, en aquel juego. Miguel, tú te escondiste una noche de agosto al alborear, pero en vez de ocultarte riendo, estabas triste. Y tu gemelo corazón de estas tardes extintas se ha aburrido de no encontrarte. Y ya cae sombra en el alma. Oye, hermano, no tardes en salir. Bueno, puede inquietarse mamá.
To my brother Miguel. Brother, I am sitting on the bench at our house where your absence is a bottomless pit. I remember that this is the time we used to play, and that Mama would pat us and say, boys, boys. Now I'm hiding, as I used to, from all those eventide prayers, and hoping you don't stumble upon me. Through the sala, the entry hall, the corridors. Later you go hide, and I don't find you. I remember that we made each other cry, brother, playing that game. Miguel, you hid one night in August near dawn, but instead of laughing as you hid, you were sad, and your twin heart from those bygone afternoons is weary from not finding you. And now a shadow is falling over my soul. Listen, brother, don't wait too long to come out, all right? You might upset Mama.
Ahora vamos a leer dos poemas from Trilce. Trilce es el cenit, el libro más importante de la vanguardia latinoamericana. Vallejo, sin escuelas, sin manifiestos, sin seguidores, ha quedado como la figura más epigonal de la vanguardia. A diferencia de otros poetas que sí tuvieron escuelas, sí tuvieron manifiestos y formaron seguidores. Como dije antes, Trilce es una palabra inventada. Algunos han interpretado que es la combinación de triste y dulce, pero en realidad él en una entrevista dijo que no significaba nada, que estaba buscando un título bueno para ponerle a su libro, y que se le ocurrió Trilce jugando con Trilce y decidió que ese era el título más apropiado para su libro. El libro tiene 77 poemas y ninguno tiene títulos que nos puedan orientar sobre el contenido, así que vamos a leer el poema número 18. Este poema se refiere a sus días en la cárcel y a la añoranza que él siente de la madre como la posible solución al abandono que está sufriendo. I said all of this in Spanish. I'm going to make a summary. The Trilce is the most important book of poetry for the avant-garde movement in Latin America. And this poem that I'm going to read now talks about his time in jail. He was arrested unfairly, totally unjustified. And he wrote this poem when he was in jail. And the day he was liberated, he read this poem to his friends. And Juan Espejo says that when he was reading this poem, he was in tears. Oh, las cuatro paredes de la celda, ah, las cuatro paredes albicantes que sin remedio dan al mismo número. Criadero de nervios, mala brecha, por sus 4 rincones, cómo arranca las diarias arrojadas extremidades. Amorosa llavera de innumerables llaves, si estuvieras aquí, si vieras hasta qué hora son las 4 estas paredes, contra ellas seríamos contigo los 2, más 2 que nunca, y ni lloraras, di, libertadora. Ah, las 4 paredes de la celda, de ellas me duelen entre tanto más, las 2 largas que tienen esta noche, algo de madres que ya muertas llevan por bromurados declives a un niño de la mano cada una. Y solo yo me voy quedando con la diestra que hace por ambas manos en alto en busca del terciario brazo que ha de palpar entre mí dónde y cuándo esta mayoría inválida del hombre.
This is poem number 18. Oh, the 4 walls of the cell. Ah, the 4 whitening walls that helplessly face the same number. Place where the nerves are born the worst way, through its 4 corners how it drags around the shackled daily limbs. Tender keeper of innumerable keys, if you were here, if you could see just how late these walls are still 4. Against them, we'd be with you, the 2 of us, more 2 than ever. And you wouldn't even cry. Speak up, liberator. Ah, the walls of the cell. Meanwhile, I hurt most from the 2 long ones that tonight look like mothers already dead, who each lead a child by the hand down sheer cliffs of bromine. And here I'm still alone with my right hand, which does for both, held up high, in search of tertiary arm, which has to tutor between my where and my when, this invalid majority of man.
Now we'll read the poem number 28. This is an absolutely beauty. When I read this poem for the first time, this is one of the poems that made me cry. I was far from my home too. I was in Venezuela. And it captures in an exceptional way, with so much intensity, the nostalgia for his home, and also with everyday words. I will read it. He almorzado solo ahora y no he tenido madre, ni súplica, ni sírvete, ni agua, ni padre que en el fecundo ofertorio de los choclos pregunte para su tardanza de imagen por los broches mayores del sonido. ¿Cómo iba yo a almorzar? ¿Cómo me iba a servir de tales platos distantes esas cosas cuando habráse quebrado el propio hogar, cuando no asoma ni madre a los labios? ¿Cómo iba yo a almorzar? No, nada. A la mesa de un buen amigo he almorzado con su padre recién llegado del mundo, con sus canastías que hablan en tortillo, retinte de porcelana, bisbiciando por todos sus viudos alvéolos y con cubiertos francos de alegres tiroriros, porque estanse en su casa. Así que gracia. Y me han dolido los cuchillos de esta mesa en todo el paladar. El yantar de estas mesas, así, en la que se prueba amor ajeno en vez del propio amor, torna tierra el bocado que no brinda la madre, que hace golpe la dura deglución, el dulce y el aceite funérico, el café. Cuando ya se ha quebrado el propio hogar y el sírvete materno no sale de la tumba, la cocina a oscuras, la miseria de amor.
Now I have eaten lunch alone and have had no mother or entreaty or help yourself or water or father who in his fluent offertory of boiled corn asks about his delay of image and for the larger clasps of sound. How was I going to eat? How was I going to serve myself those things from such distant plates when our very hearth will have been broken, when not even a glimpse of mother touches my lips? How was I going to eat a bite? I have had lunch at the table of a good friend with his father, recently arrived from the world, with his white-haired aunts chattering in the dappled chinking of china, buzzing about all their alveolate widowers and generous place settings of joyous tootlings because they are in the house. Ah, how pleasant, and the knives of this table have hurt every bit of my palate. Thus the victuals of these tables, which demonstrate altruistic rather than selfish love, turn to dirt the mouthful not offered by the mother, make difficult deglutition a blow, the sweet bile, coffee, funereal oil, when your own hearth has already been broken, and the maternal help yourself does not leave the tomb, the kitchen in darkness, the misery of love.
And from Poemas Humanos, that was the book that was published posthumously, we will read Piedra Negra sobre Piedra Blanca, and it's in short a premonition of his own death, though he didn't die on Thursday and in fall, as the poem says. He died in a rainy Holy Friday in spring, 15th of April, the month of poetry. Piedra negra sobre una piedra blanca. Me moriré en París con aguacero, un día del que tengo ya el recuerdo. Me moriré en París y no me corro, tal vez un jueves como es hoy de otoño. Jueves será, porque hoy, jueves que proso estos versos, los húmeros me he puesto a la mala y jamás como hoy he vuelto con todo mi camino a verme solo. César Vallejo ha muerto, le pegaban todos sin que les haga nada, le daban duro con un palo y duro, también con una soga, son testigos los días jueves y los huesos húmeros, la soledad, la lluvia, los caminos.
Black stone on a white stone. I will die in Paris with hard, dirty rain on a day I now remember. I will die in Paris, and I don't run. Maybe a Thursday, like today, in autumn. Thursday, because today, Thursday, when I prose these lines, I have forced my humeri on unwillingly, and never like today have I again, with all my road, seen myself alone. César Vallejo is dead. They beat him, everyone, without him doing anything to them. They hit him hard with a stick and hard likewise with a rope. Witnesses are the Thursdays and the humorous bones, the loneliness, the rain, the roads.
Now it's going to be very difficult to read my own work in front of this amazing beauty. But I will going to read some of my poems from my new book. Before, I want to thank all the people that made possible this book, because the cover was made by Phyllis Portela, one painter that lives in New York. The back cover is a comment by Edie Grossman, the translator of so many Latin American writers and Hispanic writers. The pictures were taken by Daniela Dino. I also want to thank my husband for his support always, and for because he was instrumental in deciding what title to give to the book too. And of course to Maureen that translate the book. So I'm going to read like 5 minutes, 8, so we have time to discuss the reading. Recomienzo. Reinicio este constante desplazarme. Atravieso montañas, desiertos y llanuras, ni míos ni tuyos los dominios de la imaginación. Ríos, volcanes, lavas y cenizas, un incendio interior me devora, las sombras cabalgan en la nueva aurora. Peregrino por las 4 estaciones, derrumbo murallas, confundida entre la turba, entre el huracán y las aves. Busco la antorcha, la palabra que den el blanco, el aroma de la hierba silvestre, la patria de nostalgias, y vivorea en mi cuerpo una violenta sensación de amor.
Again. It begins again, this relentless journey over deserts and plains, neither mine nor yours, but dominions of imagination. By lamplight, I grope my way across rivers, volcanoes, lava, and ash. A fire devours me from within. I return from the night on the wings of sunrise, a pilgrim crossing the 4 seasons. I demolish the ancient walls of cities, confused in the teeming crowds between the hurricane and the birds, in search of a sliver of light. From a single word, let the smell of wild grass, the mother of nostalgia, strike at the heart of the target and twist inside me with the violence of love.
I have to say that this book was written after I had the experience of suffer cancer, and in front of one experience so hard, an obstacle that big to overcome, we come to value as never life, and also to find support in the highest inner self, or in whatever you believe that can help you in those moments. And I wrote this poem too in these times. Tu nombre. Digo tu nombre y todo se ilumina. Pienso en tu nombre y estoy lista para el viaje. Sueño tu nombre y me despierto de una pesadilla. Escribo tu nombre y aparece la palabra amor. Te llamo y brota agua en el desierto de mi pena. Grito tu nombre y fecundas de fulgor el universo. Me lleno de tu nombre y hay esperanza limpia en mis caminos. Me abrazas, me besas y estoy viva.
Your name. I say your name and everything lights up. I think about your name and I am ready for a voyage. I dream your name and I awake from a nightmare. I write your name and the word love appears. I call to you and water sprouts from the desert of my sorrow. I shout your name and you impregnate the universe with radiance. I fill myself with your name and there is clean hope in my pathway. You hold me, you kiss me, and I am alive.
And this other poem is also something that I felt the necessity to write when I was sick, and is to encourage people to live, even though if they are very depressed or with a heart pain, or I have had in my life friends that have committed suicide, students that come to my office with this immense pain too, and at those moments you realize that in the moments when you are really sick, and you realize how much is important life and how much you should value life as the biggest present that we have in this world. So I wrote this poem to encourage people to value life and to forget those ideas of commit suicide. Poema para suicidas. Atrapa la llama que alumbra tus orillas y posterga el descenso hacia el abismo. Aunque sientas que no hay dolor más grande que el dolor de estar vivo, ni mayor pesadumbre que la vida consciente. Cierro comillas. Un veneno no sacia la sed de firmamentos. No prives de brisa tus pulmones. Archiva navajas y cuchillos. No vislumbres tu sangre a goterones. Enciende las luminarias de tu alma. Olvida las balas que marcaron golondrinas con muertes imaginarias. Y con el placer que bailas cumbia o vallenato, manda la muerte a pudrirse en las letrinas. Antes que emprendas tu regreso, descubre del cóndor su saber, y serena, sin vértigo, sin asco, ante la carroña de los precipicios, aprende a navegar en las alturas.
For the suicidal. Trap the flame that illuminates your shores and hold back the descent into the abyss. Even though you feel there is no pain greater than the pain of being alive, nor grief heavier than conscious life. Poison does not quench thirst for the heavens. Do not deprive your lungs of the breeze. File away the razors and knives. Do not visualize your blood gushing. Light the lamps of your soul. Forget the bullets that branded the swallows with imaginary deaths. And with the pleasure with which you dance the cumbia or vallenato, send death to rot in a latrine. Before you set out on your return, find the condor's wisdom and serenely, without vertigo or disgust, faced with the carrion of the precipices, learn to navigate in the highlands.
Casa de la infancia. Hoy volvió a rodar la lluvia entre las tejas y saltó del cementerio mi abuelita. Se sentó como siempre en el umbral de la cocina, con la mirada fija en inciertos horizontes, y llovía tristezas por el Cristo fue que cantaba entre las ramas. Mi corazón se durmió bajo las dalias, mi ser se enterró junto a ese tiempo, con las aves de otra aurora luminosa. Siempre tengo que volver a la casa de la infancia, a naufragar en ese país deshabitado, por esos caminos que no tienen piedad de las viajeras.
Childhood home. Today the rain slipped between the tiles, and my grandmother hopped out of the cemetery. She sat, as usual, on the threshold of the kitchen, with her gaze set on uncertain horizons. And it rained sorrows for the great Kiskadee singing among the branches. My heart fell asleep beneath the dahlias. My being was interred along with that time with the birds from some other luminous aurora. I always have to return to my childhood home, to flounder in that deserted country, on those destroyed paths that have no compassion for travelers.
Now I'm going to read one poem that I think is more actual than ever. It's La Inmigrante, and is dedicated to all the immigrant women. Mujer que caminas noche y día, con tu llave inmemorial, das nacimiento a la palabra veraz, atraviesas el río y nadie te reconoce. Te mojas, sudas, pierdes tus zapatos. Otra jornada abrumada de cansancio. No puedes verbalizar tus injurias, pero eres sabia aunque te encuentren infraganti. Te interrogan. ¿Quién eres? ¿De dónde vienes? ¿Qué buscas en esta tierra que ya tiene dueños y fronteras y murallas y hermanos que saben de la muerte lenta? Al espacio de tu linaje vuelves, como sombra que releo. En tu luminosa faz el fuego no termina. Escapas, caes, te levantas, te sacudes, hablas en tu lengua de tortilla, muerdes tus palabras de café y no te dejas derrotar por la nostalgia. Tu canto se ahoga, se alejan las salidas. Eres inmigrante, tu identidad se ha reducido para siempre. No entiendes de visas ni de planetas fragmentados. Aprendes a decir good morning, pero a nadie le interesa how you are, ni que estés habitada por un hijo sepultado en el desierto, por la ilusión de un empleo, de un refugio para dormir en paz. Yo también soy la ruptura de la costura, y aquí dentro no se disipa la niebla. Y sucede que miro en tu espejo y me veo.
Immigrant woman. Woman that walks night and day, with your immemorial key, you give rise to the true word. You cross the river, and no one acknowledges you. You get wet, you sweat, you lose your shoes. Another day's journey burdened with exhaustion. You cannot verbalize your injuries, but you are wise even if they catch you red-handed. They interrogate you. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you want from this land that already has owners, and borders, and walls, and brothers who know about slow death? To the place of your lineage you return, like a shadow that I reread. In your luminous visage, the fire does not end. You escape. You fall. You get up. You shake yourself off. You speak in your tortilla tongue. You bite your coffee words, and you do not let nostalgia defeat you. Your song drowns. The exits get farther away. You are an immigrant. Your identity has been reduced forever. You neither understand about visas nor fragmented planets. You learn to say good morning, but no one is interested in how you are, or that you are inhabited by a son buried in the desert, by hope of getting a job, of a refuge to sleep in peace. I, too, am the rupture in the seam. Here inside, the fog does not dissipate, and so it happens that I look at your reflection in the mirror, and I see myself.
Volver a la niñez. Volver a la niñez se dice fácil. Al delantal de flores, al materilerilero, al tuntún del diablo con el tridente al hombro, al ángel con el bastón dorado, a las madrugadas de 4 de la mañana para asistir al templo con devoción forzada. Volver a los juegos de pelota, a escalar los montes de los Andes con frío avaricioso, cruzar el puente sobre el río infernal de la quebrada con un miedo que muerde las agallas. En verdad, poco hay de memorable en todo esto. Tal vez mi soledad entre la hierba, el diálogo inconcluso con los pájaros y la permanente envidia de sus alas. Mas ¿para qué toda esta perorata de nostalgias? Si al final sé que soy igual que el Amazonas o el Potomac, que siempre van y nunca pueden volver a su punto de partida.
Back to childhood. Back to childhood. It's easily said. To the flowery apron, to mate rile rile ro, to the beat of the devil with a pitchfork on his shoulder, to the angel with the golden staff, to the early starts at 4 a.m, visiting temples with forced devotion. Back to ball games, to climbing the Andes Mountains in the grasping cold, to crossing the bridge over the infernal noise of the gorge, with fear gnawing at our insides. Honestly, little of this is memorable. Perhaps just my loneliness in the grass, my inconclusive dialogue with the birds, and my permanent envy of their wings. But why all this nostalgic sing-songing if, in the end, I know I'm just like the Amazon or the Potomac, that always flow and never return to their starting point?
And I'm going to conclude with this poem for my parents. I am also an orphan already. And this is a very sad poem, but I'm going to read it here. Te fuiste. Te fuiste en plena cosecha de verano, entraste a la casa del silencio. Todas las palabras recogiste, nos dejaste con la mirada húmeda y el corazón luchando a contrapelo. Qué triste aquella noche, contigo hasta el alba, sin oírte pronunciar una palabra. Te miraba y desde la eternidad me sonreías, con tus ojos cerrados de ternura y tu andar detenido para siempre. Repetí tu nombre hasta el cansancio, los momentos que pasamos conversando, y te vi erguirte como estatua, en mí misma me habitabas. Hoy en el reino del insomnio, estás aquí suavizando mi dolor, con tu pecho generoso y tus últimas palabras. Hija mía, que Dios me la bendiga.
You went away. You went away in the middle of the summer harvest. You entered the house of silence. You gathered up all your words. With a damp look, you left us with our hearts struggling against the tide. Such an unhappy night with you until dawn, not hearing you utter one word. I looked at you, and you smiled back at me from eternity. With your closed eyes and tenderness, your movement stopped forever. I repeated your name to exhaustion, the times we spent talking. I saw you rise up like a statue inside me. You inhabited me. Today, in the kingdom of insomnia, you are here softening my pain with your generous chest and your last words. God bless you, my daughter.
That was just beautiful. Thank you both. And just a small reminder that we're selling Consuelo's book here in the back. Thank you for coming. Thanks.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.